And welcome, everyone. Today is our first panel discussion. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. I thank everyone for tuning in, and I thank our panel. I'm going to do some quick introductions. Today we have Eleni Anastos. You are a business, money, success coach and speaker out of Clearwater, Florida. Then we have Mark Metry, a best-selling author of Screw Being Shy, Global Top 100 Humans 2.0 podcast host, Amazon Prime's The Social Movement, and you're also a speaker. And last but not least, Joseph Federico, you are a digital and social media marketing and GTM strategist. Welcome, panel. I would like to start with Eleni, if you could just give us a little background and who you are.
Hello, thank you again for doing this, Roger. It's good to be here. Again, my name's Eleni Anastos, and I am that business, money, success coach. But it all boils down to, I'm very passionate about helping people get out of their own way, helping people elevate their game so they can make the money they want to make, and as importantly, live the life they want to live a life of freedom on their terms. I said previously that I never got the memo that said we can't have it all. And I believe that you can have the business you want and you can have the life that you want and deserve. We're just not meant to do it alone.
Thank you. And Joseph.
Sure. I'm Joe Federico, and I currently run Anchors to Desk Publishing and Media. I have a background in, as Roger had said, GTM strategy, working for places like Verizon, working on their persona building. And I too believe that everybody should have it all on social media. That's my specialty. Also encouraging people to just push forward, especially in times like these, Roger. So I appreciate you hosting this panel today. So thank you so much. Absolutely.
And Mark.
Roger, thanks for having me. Thank you all for being here. How do I introduce myself? I do a lot of different things, but honestly, I focus on the most important thing that I could possibly be focusing on, in my opinion. And so I have 13 years of experience of marketing online, but my entire focus is on mental health, anxiety, depression, suicide, because, I was a successful entrepreneur making a ton of money, but yet parts of my brain didn't work. And so I've had people on my podcast, from the Netflix co-founder, Mark Randolph, to really, really successful people who have told me, like, man, I've had $750 million in my bank account, but I was going to kill myself. And so for me, that's kind of the most important thing that I kind of view life in. And so I focus on that, whether it's on my podcast or my book or the Amazon Prime documentary series I'm a part of, or in business, because that's really the most important thing in my mind.
Fantastic. Thank you, panel, for introducing yourselves. I did want to say where everyone is located. Eleni is in Clearwater, Florida. Joseph is in Morristown, New Jersey. And Mark is in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm in New York, so we have the whole East Coast covered between us. And folks, we are living in unprecedented times right now, as we all know. This is something no one would have thought of even a week ago or 2 weeks ago, for sure. The economy is crashing. People's lives are upside down. We are adjusting to what we're calling this new normal. But in the midst of all this, we have to remain vigilant. We have to remain positive. We have to lift each other up. And I think it's through discussions like this, it's when leaders could come together and have discussions to help our fellow man and woman through times like this. So I thank the panel. We're going to have an open discussion. This is not a news show, folks. This is a way for people to collaborate, talk, bring forth ideas. So we're going to do just that. So let me start off by asking Eleni, how is this affecting you day to day in your business and your personal life, and just what adjustments have you had to make?
Adjustments for the business, ironically, I'm actually busier because all of my work is done remotely. I work with clients all over the planet. So we're staying even more connected, though. To me, it's so vital just to know that the isolation, the self-isolation, should not mean disconnection. So doing even more to stay connected. And I mean, imagine if this happened, 20 plus years ago when we didn't have the internet, how isolating that would be. But we still have the chance to cultivate those connections. And, on a personal level, for me, it helps me to stay out of fear and worry when I'm doing for somebody else, when I'm being of service to someone else. It's kind of like you can be your own hero, do what you have control of. Like I have a 96-year-old neighbor, and I told him he's not going anywhere. I'm doing your grocery shopping, I'm taking care of you.
That's
But
all.
also still finding a way to connect even joyfully. Like, for example, I took him some toilet paper and I had it gift wrapped. And he was so thankful for the laughter. We can't forget that with all of these emotions going on, we still have to try to connect to a little bit of joy to maintain some semblance of sanity in the midst of, we've been thrust into something that nobody knows. So the unfamiliar can send you down a spiral of fear, doubt, and worry. So I think it's vital. And I know for myself, I distance myself from what I call fear mongering, but I stay a student of the facts. So I want to be mindful, but I don't want to be fearful.
Well said, Eleni. And I know you and I have talked offline a couple of times this week. You told me a couple of stories where, you would go to the grocery store and, there were some exchanges. Some people might have been angry, and there's all kinds of emotions happening,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about some of those, interactions that you've had?
Yes. Well, at the grocery store, for example, I'm sure it's similar everywhere else. They were limiting things like one roll of toilet paper per person, one bottle of hand soap, and people seeing it as a struggle, seeing it as opposition, that we're against each other. And I kept walking up and down the aisles whenever I saw somebody get really emotional in a negative way, that we're in this together. We're going to get through this. We're in this together. We're going to get through this. So I think it's vitally important not to get stuck in any blaming, shaming, like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why are you reacting that way? That's just going to help that person spiral farther down. I think what people want more than anything now is the validation. Like, I saw this little elderly woman in the grocery store who started to get so upset and so angry. Somebody had tried to reach into her basket to grab one of the items she had. I caught it, and, not on my watch, but I was reassuring her, people need to be validated. People want to be seen, even from a distance, and heard. And just something as simple as, how are you feeling? How are you doing? I think it's so important that people still just want to be heard.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Joseph, how are things in your world and your business, and how is this pandemic affecting your clients?
Sure, Roger. So it is certainly an interesting time, and I also do most of my work from home anyway. But I am as we all are as human beings, we're a creature of habit. We all want to stay connected, and I guess my first question, this is to the world essentially, is why haven't we been connecting online and through technology sooner? I wrote an article actually about 2 weeks ago, and I went on my podcast, and I also did an IGTV live event regarding, we can still stay connected even though from afar. And I'm a firm believer in that, because again, we are social creatures. And even though we are, self-quarantining and staying away and doing that, social distancing that our government and our local, townships are saying to do, we're proof in the pudding that we can still connect with each other, learn from each other. I will say that I had definitely not expected this, but I am getting more people actually from the editorial side of my life, those other authors and creatives kind of looking to me, which is an honor, and it was unexpected to be a beacon to share my feedback on what is currently happening, not only with the virus, but also to stay connected and also to fight xenophobia, which I see on social media constantly, because I'm constantly on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, kind of not trying to be that alarmist, but also learn from what's going on and learn and educate myself so I can better help my clients going forward as well. So I am kind of evolving my strategy from home, for my business, for my clients, for new clients that may have to kind of change. For instance, if they're in the service industry, if they're a bartender or a hairstylist, how can they kind of switch gears and work from home and still earn a decent living during this strange time? So I am trying to just muddle through and kind of be that beacon and leader as we all are. So
Fantastic, Joe. And Mark, how is COVID-19 affecting your world and your business and your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, I love what I heard about the difference between fear mongering versus being a student. I think that's so important. And then, honestly, I feel like before this too, any kind of crisis, any kind of terrible event, if you go on Twitter, it's going to make you feel like the world is just collapsing around you and like everything is being set on fire. And so I think now with a legitimately serious threat, that's times 100, and it's perpetuating a lot of uncertainty and fear. And so honestly, for me, like I see a direct correlation between the time I spend on Twitter and honestly broadly social media networks, although I don't really see this on LinkedIn too much, versus sort of how unhappy, uncertain I am. But with that being said, yeah, I mean, it's been a massive difference. For the last year, I have been gearing up for this month in March because my book just came out last weekend. I had a TEDx talk this month, tomorrow. So many different events. Like I had over 20 different events that I was scheduled to speak at, one with like Gary Vee. All that stuff is gone now. And so I'm sort of at a position where I have to sort of figure out my plan B of how do I continuously push my message out there, even though mostly everything I do is done virtually. But there's also like that invaluable like in-person piece that was a big part of my business, podcast, speaking. And so, yeah, I mean, it's gotten really interesting. And, my plan B is definitely to just make more kind of virtual platforms kind of go, even though most of my work there is done already. And so no serious problems, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I left Boston, and right now I'm kind of self-quarantine with my parents, and they live outside of the city. And so it's not bad here, but yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting time. And so for me, what I'm really focusing on is like, I think that this is going to be a great opportunity for a lot of people. And I don't mean to say that like, despite the really bad things that have happened, but I think like, for example, like when the Boston Marathon bombing happened in Boston, I mean, it brought everyone so much closer. And so to be quite frank, like I feel like so many of us, especially like in the like entrepreneur, maybe high income field or even middle income, I feel like we've gotten so spoiled, even though life is hard in general, but I feel like we have really sort of disconnected from how privileged we are. Like, hey, you can leave your house anytime and go to a grocery store and pick up whatever you want that's been globalized and shipped around the world, and you can get it in 5 seconds. Or it's like, hey, I go on Amazon and I press a button that says buy now, and then tomorrow it shows up, but now it's going to show up in like 2 weeks. And so I just feel like for me, this has been a great moment of just kind of like understanding what's happening and just kind of going back to humanity and realizing like a lot of us have been so spoiled and privileged. And I feel like now is quite frankly a good wake-up call. And it's making a lot of people realize a lot of the most important things on life of like, whether it's, your family and how, that dynamic works out while you guys are self-quarantined, whether it's your health, because we know that people with underlying health conditions are more affected by this, whether it's your money and you have to realize you have to make a plan B and literally tomorrow everything can change. And so for me, I'm just kind of using it as a sign to do those things. And then to also, in a time where there is insane uncertainty, I think real leadership is going to shine through. And a lot of people who people were following who thought were leaders, but now are seeing based on their actions, aren't really leaders. I think it's going to create an amazing opportunity for people who have the right intentions, have the right values, have the right priorities to rise up and actually become leaders. And so I think this is going to be an amazing opportunity. With that being said, I hope no one out there gets sick or infected or dies or anything like that. So my heart goes out to them too. But
all great points, Mark. Thank you for that. Which leads me to ask Eleni, speaking of leaders and leadership, right where you live at Clearwater Beach in Florida, we saw just, up until I believe yesterday, the beaches were packed.
Yeah.
People didn't seem to be taking this serious. What was it like being there in the midst of all that? And when did leadership finally say, okay, we need to make some changes?
Well, leadership finally late last night or early this morning stepped up, and the beach is going to be closed by the end of today. But what it caused between those of us that live here, the residents, and the spring breakers and the tourists, incredible dissension, so much friction. It was surreal. And I mean, I, again, keep myself out of it, staying away from it. But I feel like, again, as what was being said about the leadership, we have to step up. We have to take a stand. You can't be afraid about what somebody else is going to think about you or say about you. I'm going to do what I feel is best for myself and the greater good. We have to take care of ourselves first. That's the truth. That's not being selfish. That's being selfless. The old airplane analogy, put the mask on yourself first. And I believe in doing that, if we all take our personal responsibility, then the greater good is impacted tremendously. And leading going forward, like I know I'm reaching out to people and I want to help them create a vision of what they want going forward after this, because I believe we will get through this. I know it's going to be tremendously difficult, but that's my belief. I'm holding on to that we will get through this. And I think when you can help people create a vision for their future, it's building a psychological structure for hope. And we all need hope. We all need something to look forward to. So those of us that aren't afraid to step out, help people create that vision for their future so they can already psychologically get in that place of being hopeful to move beyond this.
Yes. Again, very well said, Eleni. It's good to know, what was actually happening down there, but it's also good to know that action has been taken and now the beaches are closed down in Florida. Joseph, how are things in the digital world? What are you seeing out there? I know Mark talked a little bit about Twitter and whatnot, but what are you seeing from a standpoint of the type of messages that are going out on social and digital media at this time?
Of course. So there is a lot, from a trending standpoint, of course, COVID-19 and all of the related, hashtags and themes are kind of, coming at us, not only as leaders, but in the community that's always on social media, just working for clients and for content. I'm seeing a big uptake in kind of flooding against that with a more positive note, not only from my colleagues and coworkers, but also other leadership that may be working on social media. So I'm trying to kind of not ride their coattails, but also kind of step up and say, let's support our leaders in our community, not only Twitter and LinkedIn, but especially Facebook here in Morristown. I was invited actually last night. We are kind of trying to assist those in need, especially the small businesses here in Morristown that are in the service industry, especially our restaurants, because we are a hub for bars and restaurants here in New Jersey. So I'm just trying to me personally take that lead, share content and menus and times where people can go do curbside to go or only to get their families fed from afar. And even our local DoorDash has put into effect where they can only drop food out from the door. So I am getting a sense from, from our, panel here as well, that I see a positive shift, and I'm seeing definitely community, not only in the physical state, but also online. So it's truly important going forward.
Wonderful. And Mark, you and I had the opportunity to speak for about an hour last week, had you on as a guest to my podcast. You were talking about a lot of things that was new to me when it comes to health and well-being. And I'd love if you could just share a little bit of your knowledge, because this is important all year round, not just in times of crisis like right now. So can you please share some of your knowledge about health and well-being and why it's so important to eat well and to take care of ourselves always?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And first and foremost, I want to address what I heard, what happened in Florida. And I was on social media today, and I saw, I'm sure, like that viral clip on the news of a ton of people at spring break saying, if I get Corona, I get Corona. Screw it. I've been planning this trip for 3 months. It's not even that big of a deal, all this stuff. And honestly, like in my personal life, I've noticed that people are way nicer now, whether it's my neighbor or whether it's my grocery store, because we're kind of getting in touch with those real human values that I feel like we've been separated from. But with that being said, you also kind of have to look at Eleni's point is this can either push you to be more impulsive, to act more out of fear, or to actually help people and do things that you wouldn't normally do. And so I saw so many people on Twitter be like, oh my God, these millennials or these Gen Z, and I'm Gen Z. And it's just like, I mean, I think that is a disease in and of itself, tribalism, of taking a group of people and taking individuals that we both know they're not so great people in every generation, in every group that you point out to. And so I feel like that to me is something that I'm paying attention to, because we need unity. We don't need division. And so with that being said, it's been such an interesting time, because my book is all about social anxiety, being shy, telling people to not socially isolate themselves when that's basically like the law now. And so it's a super interesting time. But I think, like, just for time's sake, like to drop some things, one of the top doctors out there for mental health, his name is Dr. Daniel Amen. And he said that every single mental health issue has one thing in common, and that is a deficiency in vitamin D, which you usually get from the sun and then also by some specific foods. And so I think that's a super important time. And so if you live in an area that's not too crowded, where you can go on a walk outside, that is hyper critical, because in times where, one, our environment is very, very strict. You can't leave your house, or if you can't really go to restaurants. You can't really go to a lot of these places that we've been used to. It can be very easy for someone to like be trapped in their house. And whether it's, they go into a lot of different ways that they don't take care of themselves, whether it's they just watch TV all day, or it's they eat all the junk food in their house, or they're drinking alcohol way too often because they're in that environment. And so what I would say is, like, try your best to be active. Even if you can't even go outside, try your best to, do like a home workout, do burpees, do push-ups. That's number one. And then number two is, I kind of look at mental health from a scientific standpoint, because I think a lot of things, when you look at someone's story, can be very anecdotal and not really relate to many people. And so for me, a key way that we can address mental health, and quite frankly, a lot of the leadership communities talk about this, but it's looking at this neurotransmitter called serotonin. And serotonin, Simon Sinek talks about it all the way to, mental health communities. And when you actually look at it, serotonin does a lot of things in our body, from regulating our mood to our appetite to our sleep to functioning in social groups. And so it's super important for social anxiety. And what I was telling you before, Roger, on our podcast was that, maybe 15, 20 years ago, most of science thought that the majority of our serotonin is in our brain, because it's a neurotransmitter. Turns out that's not the case. And only 5-10% of serotonin is in our brain. The rest, 90-95%, is in your gut microbiome, which is a health system I didn't even learn about growing up, but it's this ecosystem of bacteria between your stomach and intestines that are implicated in many, many different functions throughout our body. There are nerves that connect your gut microbiome directly to your brain. And the two biggest sources of danger for your gut microbiome are, number one, chronic stress and psychological trauma, which are, massive topics that are very deep that, I think a lot of people, especially now, are being caught into, especially with chronic stress and always feeling that uncertain and fear. And then number two is your dietary choices. And so what's really interesting is that, like in Europe, for example, they've banned almost 500 ingredients that bans food manufacturers from putting them in their foods. But yet, if you walk into America, those are in every single kind of grocery store that have been associated from cancer to mental health problems. And so when you look at that, a major key that someone can just improve their overall mental wellness is by trying to tackle that serotonin through their food. And so there's no such thing as a universal healthy diet for everybody. It just doesn't exist. But the universals are try to stick to natural, healthy, whole foods. Don't eat anything that was made in a factory or by a scientist. And if you have a box or a bag or whatever, and you flip it over and you look at the ingredients, and there's like an essay of just like things that you don't recognize, that means you shouldn't eat it. And my rule of thumb is like, if you don't recognize that ingredient when you read it, it's not because you need to be a scientist or a doctor to understand what you're putting in your body. It's if you don't understand it, when you put it in your body won't understand it either. And that can have varying health effects, from anxiety to maybe your insulin being pumped up, which can lead to diabetes. And so that's what I would say for people, if that makes sense.
Fantastic. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, and I'd like just to open it up to the panel to have a group discussion. Anything from today's discussion you'd like to ask each other? Any questions? Feel free. Who wants to start?
I'm happy to start. What I'd like to ask is it's a practice that I've done for years, not just in light of our current situation. I have a gratitude practice. Every day I write in a gratitude journal. Things I'm grateful for, from the concrete things to friendship, to a surprise phone call, to my own physical health. And I think especially now in this time, it's too easy to focus on what we don't have or what we're going to be missing, because things have shut down, because the world is in a place that we've never seen before. So my wish, my hope is that people can still find a connection to gratitude, even if it's think of one thing right now that you're grateful for. Focus on it, focus on it, focus on it, and open your heart back up, hoping that people make decisions out of love and not fear. So do you all have gratitude practices?
Find that truly amazing, because even before this as well, team, I grew up in a very positive environment where we didn't take the small things for granted, especially now that we're canceling vacations and not seeing each other for birthdays, and not only for family, but also for coworkers and clients. I would say that I personally just wrote, especially one of those, shower pad, notepad for ideas and thoughts and lyrics and drawings. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, as this started to unfold quite rapidly, I wrote a gratitude list to myself to remind myself not only to not check the news, but twice a week possibly, because there's so much negativity, but to also kind of be a leader, during this time. And I personally try to, with my partner here, that because we're so quarantined, to at least talk about what we're thankful for or a positive for that day to get us through. So that's just fantastic in my opinion, truly.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the main thing that I'm thinking about right now is like, there are so many, whether it's kids that are off school or people who might be working remotely and they have more time on their hands, or people who don't have a job anymore. no matter how long this lasts, whether, again, nobody knows, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, 6 months, I don't know, a year. I think that after this, like 10 years from now, people are going to think like, man, I had 2 weeks or I had a month with so much time to like finally do all those things that I was saying, oh, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to do a gratitude practice in the morning. And so for me, my best hope is I hope people don't use this time, even though it's a scary time. I hope people don't use this time to escape and to sort of be locked in uncertainty, but to go on the offense and be like, if this is going to happen, I'm going to make this the best way that this can possibly happen. I'm going to make like a program for myself to follow so that whether it's 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, I come out of this a better person and more prepared for the world at that state. So that's what I'm thinking about.
Wow, fantastic. And just to answer your question, Eleni, my post this morning on LinkedIn was about gratitude. I woke up wanting to speak about gratitude, and I had gratitude in my heart for everything we do have. Again, trying not to think about the negative because we're inundated all day long with the news and social media. So absolutely, it's something I attempt to do on a daily basis. It's something I'm attempting to teach my children and those around me, just bring awareness to gratitude and the importance. So look, panel, thank you so much. We are out of time because I know each of you have things that you have to get off to right now. This was wonderful. I cannot thank you enough for your time, for sharing all of your wisdom. And let's definitely do it again. Any last minute words from anyone?
Yeah, Stacey. Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was going to
I just
say,
messed up the whole order.
let's please remember that we are in this together. And if anyone feels disconnected, please reach out. Please reach out. If you're willing to be vulnerable, to me, that's the gateway to accessing your real strength.
I would have to, second that as well. And also, as far as, social media, please only read or try to limit yourself if you're not a business owner, to stay positive and to have gratitude on social media going forward, and please spread the kindness.
My final words are like the same way that like a very strong and powerful bear has to sometimes hibernate to get that strength and to replenish. I feel like that's sort of, what I'm in the middle of doing now. And then, yeah, if anyone is interested in, mental health transformation, definitely check out what I've got. Same offer. Feel free to message me if I can help with anything. And Roger, thank you so much for setting this up.
Yes, appreciate it, Roger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we will drop everyone's link in this post right after so people could reach you. Thank you, panel. People out there, stay strong and healthy. We're going to get through this together. Thank you.